I feel like we're ready to start the meeting. How about you, Christy?
Yep, I don't see anyone else waiting in the waiting room, so I think you're good to go.
Okay, well, I'd like to welcome everyone to the 2024 Otter Ponds annual general meeting. We're trying to get back onto a bit of a schedule to have them towards the end of the year. Um, and yeah, we're going to try to keep it kind of a tight and quick meeting, although everyone is welcome to ask questions as we go along. And yeah, I mean, I think that's good as far as the welcome is concerned. I would like to do a land acknowledgement, though. Now I've got security on my iPhone because I'm going to Belize soon, and I want more security. God, it makes it a pain to fire up the phone. Okay, so here is the land acknowledgement for our meeting tonight. In the spirit of meaningful reconciliation, I'd like to acknowledge our presence today in Mi'kma'ki, the traditional unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq people. We're joining this evening from Spignacity, one of the seven districts of Mi'kma'ki, but I know we have people tuning in from across Wabanaki. The Treaty of Peace and Friendship of 1725 and subsequent treaties remain foundational to the relationship between the Mi'kmaq people and all Canadians. We are all treaty people. And with that, I would like to ask if there are any additions to the agenda tonight. And I'm not hearing a chorus of requests to change things, so I'd like to move that we approve the agenda as is. Do I have a seconder?
I'll second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All right, great, okay. I think we can conclude that the agenda has been approved. All right, now the next item on the agenda is reading and approval of the 2023 AGM minutes. So Christy, could you do that for us, please?
Yep, I can do that. Bear with me.
I like your background, by the way.
Thank you. It is at Otter Ponds, as you all know. The 2023 annual general meeting of the Otter Ponds Demonstration Forest was on June 10th last year. It was another hybrid meeting at Kate Campbell's house and via Zoom. Those present were Arvid Sandstrom, Wade Prest, Kate Campbell, Dan Hutt, Ross Watson, Laurie Morton, Karen McKendry, Kevin Keys, Jana Buxted, Pat O'Toole, Mark Bishop, Lauren Burrows, and Christy Verstraeten. The business meeting was called to order at 10 a.m. by Dan, and Christy was appointed as minutes taker for this meeting. Agenda. The agenda was approved as submitted. The minutes. Christy read the minutes from the 2022 AGM and moved that the minutes be accepted, seconded by Dan. Motion, minutes approved. For the treasurer's report, Wade submitted the following report, an opening balance, so that was for October 1st, 2022, of $44,025.79. Closing balance, and that would be for March 31st, 2023, was $41,187.20. The income statement for the calendar year, January 1st to December 31st, 2022. Total revenue was $500.05. Total expenses were $5,299.15. So a net loss of $47.99.10. The balance sheet as of the end of December 2022. Total current assets, $42,625.79. Total project assets, $992,452.04. Total project improvements, $1,139,333.72. Total current liabilities, 1,282.53 cents. Total project contributions, 1,111,418.53 cents. Total earnings of 26,632.66 cents. And total liabilities and equity of 1,139,333.72 cents. Wade moved to approve the treasurer's report, seconded by Ross. Motion carried. Project updates. The 2022 Otter Ponds activities overview was given by Dan Hutt. He gave a photo slideshow and went over the aftermath of Hurricane Fiona, all of the 2022 events that we held, Species at Risk Bird Workshop, Wild Outside Tour, the Common Ground Project Partner Tour, Boundary Line Maintenance Workshop, 3-day Directional Felling and Chainsaw Safety Certification course. Our ongoing research projects at the time were our Conserving Bird Species at Risk project with Dr. Cindy Stacer, a soil liming trial, the owl boxes, and the wetland health assessment that we're doing with Ducks Unlimited. Went over our plans for 2023 and briefly went over our 10-year Otter Ponds summary report that is available on our website at otterponds.ca. The next presentation was liming trial updates, and that was by Jana Bokstedt. She was a researcher at the Nova Scotia Department of Natural Resources and Renewables, and recently took over Kevin Key's role on this project, on the soil liming project. So the project started in 2018 when sections of Otter Ponds were aerially limed, and the project is to see how the lime moves through the ecosystem and how it helps with the impacts of acid rain deposition. So Jana gave an overview of how past acid rain deposition has resulted in a decrease in the soil pH, leading to a base cation depletion, which is affecting plant uptake. So the liming will help reverse this issue and raise the soil pH back up. There's some Fiona damage to the sample plots for that project, especially in the softwood stands. The hardwood stands fared a bit better. Jana will be collecting monitoring data in August and September of 2023, and we'll be assessing which stands are too damaged to keep as our long-term plots. And we will buffer around all the sample plots when conducting any salvage harvests. The next presentation was on our climate resiliency plan. Dan reported that we recently received a draft of the windstorm recovery and resiliency plan for Otter Ponds, written by Climate Forest Company, which is Dale Prest's company. The report includes valuable data on the Fiona impacts on site collected with drone imagery and site visits. And there were 3 main recommendations to help stand structure become more resilient. One was assisted migration. One was to retain moderate to high levels of coarse woody material in the stands. And the other was to use suitable silviculture treatments to help stands become more wind firm and more resilient to changing climate effects. Our next presentation was a salvage harvest plan. So Wade Prest presented this on behalf of Sandy Hyde of Picea Forestry. There was a drone survey done in November of 2022, which covered most of the operating area. The analysis showed just under 50 hectares having more than 51% blowdown and qualifying for the salvage cleanup on Crown land. The protocol documents Tropical Storm Fiona Crown Land Cleanup Program for the Ecological Matrix, which the government put out, states that only previously approved harvest sites with more than 51% blowdown qualify for cleanup. So that's specifically what we were looking for there. Other areas may meet the criteria, but will have to be confirmed with site visits. We had previously approved harvest sites totaling about 96 hectares, but we'll have to reevaluate based on the previous restrictions. Approval for the salvage harvest is expected by midsummer 2023. Contractors will be organized once approvals are granted, and the salvage harvest is likely to be challenging due to poor market conditions and availability of harvesting and trucking contractors. Then we moved on to the nominations reports. Dan submitted this report. So outgoing board members of 2022 to 2023. We had for NSWA, Wade Prest, Pat O'Toole, and Lori Martin. For the Mooseland Area Community Association, Dougal Prest, Jacob Prest, and Alan McKinnon. For Ecology Action Center, Karen McKendry, Arvid Sandstrom, Riley Scanlon. And for Eastern Shore Forest Watch, we had Kate Campbell, Ross Watson, and Dan Hutt. So that was the old slate. The incoming slate of directors was the same. There was no changes that year. So that was voted on. Wade moved to accept the incoming slate of directors, seconded by Ross. Motion carried. Other business, Saltscape article. Karen was contacted by Alec Bruce, a reporter for the Guysborough Journal and Saltscapes. And Saltscapes is doing an article on resilience and restoration 1 year after Hurricane Fiona, and wondered if anyone from Otter Ponds would be interested in doing a phone interview to speak to how our forest management thinking had changed post Fiona. Karen was already being interviewed in her role at Ecology Action Center, so Wade volunteered to interview for Otter Ponds. And we were going to try to convince Alec to have an interview in the woods instead of by phone. Other old business, our Otter Ponds contract renewal. We still have not heard back from the Department of Natural Resources and Renewables about the status of our contract extension, which we contacted them about after the first 10 years and then every 5 years after that. If we don't have an answer by July 2023, Karen was going to bring it up at her next meeting with department staff. And the meeting was adjourned by Kate Campbell. I move for the adoption of the minutes of 2023. Your audio is off, Dan. It's not showing you as muted. I wonder if the audio input has changed on you.
Can you hear me now, Christy?
Yes. Perfect.
Okay, so this microphone I bought is just another Amazon piece of junk because it does have a mute button, which I pressed, but when you press it again, it doesn't work. Anyway, okay, I turned it off and on. Sorry about that. Anyway, thanks for reading the minutes, Christy, from the last AGM, and I second your motion to accept them. I mean, I guess we should first ask if anyone has any comments or corrections. Everyone's had a chance. Pardon me? That's right, yeah. But if there are no comments, then I would ask all those in favor of accepting the minutes as is. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All righty. See lots of hands there. Great. So 2023 AGM minutes are accepted. Motion carried.
Ask for those opposed first.
Oh,
I don't think there will be any, but follow procedure.
saw so many hands. Anyone opposed? I can't actually see everybody. It's on the screen here, so.
Yeah, anyone should be able to turn their video on and reply in the chat and unmute themselves. I have all those options open at the moment. If anyone has any questions at any time.
Okay, that's great. Okay, so motion carried. So the next item is the treasurer's report. And Wade, maybe if you're going to present it, maybe you should sit here.
Yeah. Okay.
A better sound, and you may actually be able to, yeah, you can move the cursor around and everyone can see that. So that could be helpful. Now,
Yeah, I don't know if you'll be able to draw on it or not. You can try.
well, just moving the cursor around, I think is all probably all Wade needs. Can't really get it bigger on the screen though. If you make it,
Is
maybe
it,
maybe I need
how does
to.
it look on yours? Is it filling up the screen or is it, can you see the next slide as well?
No, it's filling just the one same,
I'm just
Okay.
wondering if I can turn off the top of my screen that shows all the people joining the meeting, and that would make more room. Side by
You
side.
can, yeah.
Just don't know how to do it.
Yeah,
That's
if you hover over them, someone to admit, one second. Yeah, if you hover over the people, it'll give you the option to hide thumbnail video, show small active speaker video, show them in a line, show them in a grid.
right.
Mhm.
I am not seeing all those options, but now I see it's displaying the next slide. It's the new PowerPoint thing. But you're
Oh,
controlling
it's showing
that off.
it's showing that on your end?
Yeah.
Oh, all I have on. Okay,
So are
well,
you able to turn that feature off? And that'll make the current slide bigger.
yeah, it's never done that before. Ah, there we go. Better?
Okay. That's pretty darn good. All right,
All right.
I'll let Wade sit here and he'll take over the show.
Okay, so can everybody see the full screen with that income statement for 9 months ending September 30th, and you see my cursor moving? Does everybody see that?
Can't see the cursor. It might not. If
Oh,
you
yeah.
hover over the top, there's a button that says annotate. So you could use that to just like make a little star by whatever you're talking about.
Yeah, I see
Okay.
moving. I saw a moving arrow. I thought I did. Oh, that might have been my own. My bad. My bad.
That's mine.
Oh, that's yours. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think you'll be able to see the cursor, Wade, but if you hit annotate, you can draw on it.
Annotate.
Suppose you say it's a button near the top somewhere to annotate.
Yeah, it shows up. It's a drop down. Let's see. I've got audio, video, participants, chat, share, all of those options, and then annotate is an option beside.
Yeah, maybe they're on the bottom, actually.
It could be showing up differently for you since I'm done sharing. Yeah.
Whiteboard, notes. Not seeing annotate anywhere. We may have to just live without it.
It's not
The
by.
only reason I use the cursor is just it makes it easier for everybody to follow me. That's all. Now the only problem being now is we see you, Christy, we don't have our income statement there again.
Oh, it's the view has changed for you?
Yes,
Yeah, we just see
we lost
you,
our,
not the presentation.
now we see you.
Mm.
Yeah,
Hmm.
you're scowling at us.
Well,
I can actually see the income statement.
I can too.
Can.
Oh, boy.
Oh, that's pretty funny.
I think it might be Dan's settings. So it can you hover over the picture of people? And then at the top it'll give you options for how to display it.
Well, I mean, I'm hovering over different people here, but I'm not seeing any. I mean, there's.
Well, if you hover at the very top, it should pop out some. Here, let's see. I can't get to it from my
Hide
screen.
self
I'm
view
sharing.
or
So sorry, what was that?
there's a hide self view. That's not what you're speaking of.
No.
No.
You know, worst comes to worst. I mean, you guys actually have the income statement. If we can't figure this out, if all of us can
Okay.
see it and you
Okay.
guys have the paper there, I mean, we can work our way through
Oh,
this.
yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
If you're confirming that you can see it,
Except for
Arvid,
the
then
people here, but
it's just very weird that we can't see it on.
Yeah.
On
Yeah.
this
Well,
screen.
that's wonders of Zoom.
I knew this was going to be a bit messed up when suddenly we were using my computer, but that's okay.
It's my fault.
No, it's not your fault, Chris. We need to be a little bit more, but resilient anyhow.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting, isn't it? It's just, okay, so everybody can see the balance or the income statement for the 9 months ending September 31st, 30th, 2024. Am I right? So what I just direct
Yep.
their attention to the important parts of the income statements for that period. So we had our salvage operation in June and July. And so there's where our revenue for the 9 months came from. We had a total of over $88,000 that we sold logs, studwood, and firewood, mostly logs and studwood, very little firewood. And then we, in our expenses, as you move down, everything was quite sort of regular kind of expenses that we had. We did a little bit of road maintenance, that was a little bit more. We had under forest management expense, we had operations planning. That was some of the work, the supervision work, and to get ready for the actual salvage operation. That was sort of the last minute stuff that had to be done after what we had done in the previous year to get ready for it. So under the forest operations expense, logging, supervision, and trucking, we had about $53,000 in expenses there. And our depreciation expense for the year, the infrastructure depreciation, that's a usual amount. The timber depletion was 18,400. And our depreciation for roads and bridges, which is a factor of how much wood we cut and trucked out of there, it was $3,900. For a total depreciation for the year 23, or for that period, $23,000, and total expenses of $82,000 for a net income of $5,900. Now, we still have a small number of bills, not large bills, to come in, and we have perhaps a little bit more revenue to come in, and that'll all be collected and put together by December 31st. So I think that we will come out with a positive net income for the year once it's all said and done. Now, one thing to be pointed out on this income statement is that the timber depletion expense is not the same as the royalties amount that we have to pay into the Department of Finance for Nova Scotia. We actually have to pay in approximately $30,000 in royalties. And because of the way accounting works, we're only allowed to claim an expense of $18,000 on that. So it impacts our cash flow somewhat. And if it was a woodlot owner situation, it would mean that we would not have a profit. We would be in the red. But for our purposes, which is, and our purpose is logical, that we will end up with a small net income on the positive side. So before we go to the balance sheet, does anybody have any questions about the income statement for that 9 months?
Is when you say royalties, do you mean stumpage?
Stumpage, yes, yes. Yeah, it's stumpage or royalties. It's often when it goes to the crown, you call it royalties. So, I suppose. There are no questions then? So Christy, can you show the balance sheet for that period, please?
Yes. Here we go. Should be up.
What does everybody see?
Yeah, I see balance sheet.
Okay, we still don't, but. Okay, so I take it that that's split into two slides? Christie, the balance sheet?
It is, yes. We have the assets on this slide and the liabilities on the
Okay,
next slide.
so I'm just gonna point out the same things here. What is significant about this year rather than go through everything? And I was just starting at the top of the first page and talking about assets. So, in this period of time, our main under the road network, access road network, we spent $8,787.80 on improving, adding to our road network in a manner that is a capital expense. It's not just regular maintenance. And that was basically all in the form of graveling a section of the road that had not been graveled previously. And it had shown, we'd found out in the interim since the last graveling project that it needed it because it wouldn't hold up in wet weather. So we wanted to get that done. So we did spend that money on that this year. And the other, that puts, as you can see, we have spent, there has been a total spent of $118,000 on roads, bridges, etc., culverts, all that sort of thing at Otter Pond since we began 14 years ago. Our management plan has been fully depreciated, and we are in the process of having a new plan drawn up. That's the only, there was a drop, go back up to the timber asset. We did have additional depletion. That's at $18,000 in the income statement. So our timber asset now is down to $468,000. Started out at $545,000. That's what we valued it at. So we'll go on to liabilities. Whether that's the next slide, I don't know.
Yep, we're there.
Okay. We have an account payable. That is the second royalty check that's to go to the Minister of Finance. We have HST owing of $3,000. And probably the most important part of this balance sheet, and really the reason why we keep this, the equity, we'll just go through this again because many people have wouldn't have seen this before. The province of Nova Scotia contributed the land, and the land consists of land and timber. And we valued that initially at $1,050,350. And the Crown Lands Division of Department of Natural Resources has, since the beginning, contributed $46,900. The transition program, that was another program of the Department of Natural Resources, contributed $12,000. And through outreach programs, and that was, a lot of that was outreach money, DNR money that we got through the Nova Scotia Woodlot Owners and Operators Association of $64,700. So ignore the first figure of 1 million, but 47,000, 12,000, and 65,000 is money that the province has put into the project in our 14 years. The return on contributions is the sum total of all of our royalty payments since we began. So what's notable is that we have reached the $100,000 mark with our royalty payments. You're just over $100,000. And it's important to note that we didn't really ever have a harvest. We had a couple of small harvests, very small. We cut out our right-of-ways to build our road network. And then we had salvage operations after Hurricane Dorian and another one after Hurricane Fiona. And we still have already contributed back $100,000 to the Department of Natural Resources, to the government, to the taxpayer, however you want to put it. And then the Nova Scotia Woodlot owners and operators of their own funds have contributed $10,500 to the project. So all in all, our total retained earnings over the period is $26,000. There's the liabilities and equity are not a great significance to us because we're using the equity of that land and timber that is the basis for our project. So just to go back to the top, we have $47,000 in cash right now, but we do have that account payable. And I think that when it's all said and done, we'll be down around $20,000 to $25,000 at year end for cash in the bank. So I'll move acceptance of the treasurer's report, and if we second it, then we'll ask any questions. Well, I should get a seconder for the report. Christy, can you?
I'm not able to as I'm staff, but anyone else on the
Oh,
call?
no, I mean, you just wanted to, all right, I'll do that. So I'll move acceptance of the financial statements.
I'll second it.
And Dan will second it.
Mhm.
So I see Eugene has his hand up with a question.
I was seconding the motion.
Oh, perfect.
Okay. So are there any questions on those financial statements? Or about our salvage operation this summer? Christy, we can't see here. If there's other people who might have their hand up or be.
Okay, can you see everyone now?
Not sure.
Not sure.
Scroll back and forth.
We can scroll back and forth, but I don't, there's no pictures for most people. And so we don't know if they got their hand up.
It would show a little hand up symbol, and it would bump them to the very top. So at the moment, no one has their hand up.
Okay, you better.
My question, and this is kind of a vague thing, not directly related to this, but at the end of the last year, we had $40-some thousand in the bank. And now you're saying when all the stumpage is paid and all is said and done at the end of this year, you're anticipating about $26,000. So we've gone down $15,000 or $16,000 from last year. After doing this salvage harvest, it sounds like we lost a bunch of money on the salvage harvest.
So did everybody hear the question? Okay, well, the amount of royalties that we have to pay in cash, $30,000, and the depletion expense was 18, right? So we don't get to count that that is a cash expense or cash we have to pay that had to come out of what we already have in the bank, right?
But
And-
previous year, the stumpage was all paid, you know, for the post-Dorian harvest.
That would have, yes, in 2020's financial statements, but in 2020, the reason why this question wouldn't have come up after the Dorian harvest was because the royalties that had to be paid were quite favorable to us because prices at the mills were high, and the stumpage rates charged, or royalty rates charged by the department had not caught up with those yet. So we had quite a favorable result after the Dorian salvage, which we didn't have this time. Now, the other thing, that main thing that figures in there is this year we spent $8,800 graveling the road out of our own funds. So that's also contributes to that decrease in cash flow year to year. Any other questions? Okay, if there's no other questions, it's been moved and seconded that we accept the financial statements. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
And those opposed, nay. Motion is carried.
Thank you very much, Wade. Well, I'm certainly glad that we've been contributing so much back to the taxpayer. That's good, because we are supposed to be demonstrating economically sustainable forestry. Looks like we're doing something. Okay, so the next item on the agenda is an overview of what we did in the last year. Christy put this presentation together and we'll present it. So over to you, Christy. Ooh, I can see it too. Wonderful. Don't know what changed. I'm not touching this computer.
Okay, so are you seeing it full screen on your end?
Yep.
Okay. All right. Perfect. Gotcha. Okay. All right, so it'll mostly be pictures because who wants to look at a bunch of text on the screen? And a lot of people on the call right now are familiar with otter ponds, but I think there's a few that aren't. So I thought I would give a bit of a brief background as part of the presentation. So what is Otter Ponds? It's a 500 hectare piece of crown land and moose land. We've been operating since 2010, and it is a unique, or managed by a unique partnership between four nonprofit groups. So it's a division technically of the Nova Scotia Woodland Owners and Operators Association. The other groups are Eastern Shore Forest Watch, Ecology Action Center, and Moose Land and Area Community Association. Each of those four groups have 3 voting members on the board, and we manage together. There are also 2 ex officio members, so non-voting members. So there's one from the Nova Scotia Department of Natural Resources and Renewables, and one from Northern Pulp, as they were the previous license holder for this bit of crown land. Where's Otter Ponds? Well, for anyone who hasn't been, it's about an hour and a half from Halifax, about a little over an hour from Truro, I think. It's you can see on the screen here, it's kind of in between Tangier and Middle Musquodoboit out here. Technically still in HRM, which is wild because it's quite a ways away. So we have a zoomed in picture here. The orange is the outline of the property. And this right here is the Moose Land Road, which is the one that you can see right here. So it goes along the road and then goes out. Our access road is a little bit off the map here. It comes in and down into here. I'll show this map in a bit more detail later, but that is roughly where we are and what shape we are. So the main goals of Otter Ponds are to show that we can do ecologically, economically, and socially sustainable management of the native Wabanaki Acadian forest. And one of our more recent goals is also to practice forest restoration. Well, forest restoration has always been one of our big goals, but climate resilience is that, as with all of the hurricanes we've had recently. Multi-value forest management is really important to us. So we do manage for timber, but we also make sure to manage for wildlife habitat and wetland and soil health and recreational opportunities and a whole range of other values that that private landowners might have. One thing that makes us a bit different from most private woodlot owners is that we also have a big focus on education outreach. So we don't make a lot of money from that endeavor, but it's part of our mission to get as many people out as possible to learn more about this type of forestry. So that is very important to us. And also research partnerships. So I'll go over it a little bit more further in the presentation, some of our ongoing research projects, but we're very interested in partnering with any group that wants to do anything related to ecological forestry. We have soil projects and forest carbon projects and species at risk birds, and I'll go through them later, but we're interested in anything to do with that. Come on, there we go. So for infrastructure, all of this has been built since 2010 because there was not really any access before. So since then, we've had about 3.25 kilometers of Class D roads. The Class D roads are a bit wider than you would normally have on a private woodlot, but it's required. That's the required size since it's crown land. So we're restricted there, but that is the restriction. We've constructed 3 bridges. The first one being up here. It's on the main road into Otter Ponds over Otter Ponds Brook. It's a 5-meter span, and that was built in 2012. We also have 2 more that are basically identical on Powderhorn Hill Road, which I'll show in a bit. These were over intermittent streams, so the streams that have a lot of water at certain times of the year and nothing at the other times of the year. So in the case of these ones, I think we've got a lot of water there in the spring. So we've made them pretty wide to account for that. And it is a unique design that we worked with the Department of Environment to make. To do the least amount of disturbance in the ecosystem around. Those are both 4-meter spans. Bridges were built entirely by volunteers, which is fantastic. A lot of man hours, and they've done a really good job. So trails, we had a trail master plan done up for us by Community Forests Canada, and had been working towards the goal of a 7-kilometer trail network. We had about 5 kilometers built, but then we had Dorian and Fiona hit and pretty much decimated most of them. We've managed to recover about 3 kilometers of key trails. There's some that shouldn't be too bad to reestablish, but a couple of them will have to completely reroute because of the damage. But that gives us an opportunity to consider like educational stopping points along a new trail and what we want to talk about and just ways to show climate change effects and talk about climate resilience. So it's an opportunity. We just need a break between hurricanes to be able to fix them up. And those as well are all volunteer built and maintained yearly by volunteers. So our currently cleared trails, this is the map There's my cursor. There it is, map I showed earlier, but here's a zoomed in version. These are the trails that we currently have. This green one here, German Lake Hill Trail, it's about 1.2 kilometers. This teal one, North Pond Bluff Trail. And a little purple one here is a new one we built out into, it's a boardwalk built out into a wetland with a platform on the end. So these are the ones that we've been using this year for our educational programming, and that there are key trails, but we'd really like to reestablish more to give people more of a, to show people more of the woodlot, because there's, let me see, hard to see in any of these pictures, up on the drumlins here. It would be great to show people the hardwood stands up there again. So yeah, eventually that's what we're working towards, getting everything reestablished and being able to show people more different types of forest ecosystems on the land. And let's see. There we go. I actually follow my notes so I don't forget anything. Oh yes, so this year we actually had a lot of help, or this year and last year, together. So we had a HOWL youth program come in, as well as a group of NSCC students and some treasured wetlands volunteers. And all three of those groups were hugely instrumental in getting these trails reopened and building some new boardwalks. So that was great, and we really love having youth groups come out to do this, and it's a really satisfying connection for them to have to the land, because they can come back and visit and just see the things that they built and they helped make a reality. So I think it's important to have that connection for people. So our first visitor shelter was built in 2013 and 2014 with wood that had been harvested and built on site. It was fantastic. We had it for many, many years, and then Hurricane Dorian hit and landed square in the middle on it and completely demolished it, which is very sad. So we're starting again. And as you can see, now the hurricanes have knocked down all of the tall trees around it, so nothing's going to fall on it this time. Is both a shame and a little bit good. So we're working on that now. We've got Dan and Pat have been working on this. They've got the frame up here. It's going to have a slightly different design, and a wall along the back, and I believe sliding walls along the sides, Dan, I think. Yep. So we'll soon again have a nice space to sit and eat our lunch out of the sun or the rain. The humidor toilet was built back in 2014, still operating perfectly. Half of it at the moment is storage, and the other half is open as the toilet. Once the first side fills up, we close that side and open the new side, and that gives the first side the opportunity to decompose down while the other side fills up. So just a little bit about our forest management. We first had our management plan done in 2012. And as Wade mentioned, we're in the process now of doing an updated one. So we are trying to do a new one every about 10 years, just to incorporate all of the new data that we find. So in any new data on climate resiliency or anything that we don't know about now that we know more about in 10 years, we want it to be a kind of a living document that we can change as new information comes up. So we're not stuck to an old idea when we know something new is going to do better. We had the forest ecosystem classification data taken at the same time. So that covers, or that catalogs stand types and soil types and vegetation and a bunch of data that's really important for us for planning. We have a deadwood policy, which is a coarse woody material, and it dictates the minimum amount that we want to leave on site. We had a boreal felt lichen survey done in 2019. Didn't find any, but we found blue felt lichen, which is also a fairly rare one. We had an old growth assessment done in a little part of it for a workshop. Biodiversity and species at risk are a key part of our management, and we work that into any harvest that we plan. We've also gotten more into wetland identification and protection, so we're working with Ducks Unlimited right now to do that and get us the information we need there. And I mentioned the recovery and resilience, climate resilience plan that we had commissioned as well. So those are kind of all the things that we have in the back of our mind when we're thinking about what we want to do next at Otter Ponds, what we want the forest to look like eventually. Right, our harvests so far, like Wade said, a lot of them were right-of-way harvests and then salvage harvests. But so we had our first one in 2012 and 2013, and that was to cut a bunch of road right-of-way and to cut some large red spruce as tonewood for it's called a seedless now, but it was previously Windhorse Farm. So that was a high quality project that we were able to sell for a bit more. 2015, another road right-of-way harvest. 2019, a pre-commercial thinning was done on a section of Otter Ponds just right off of Mooseland Road. And that was a section that had started to be clear cut just before the project started, and actually kind of triggered the community to get together to create the project. So now that it's been now that it was clear cut 10 plus 15 maybe years ago, it was ready for a pre-commercial thinning in 2019, and Northern Pulp actually did that for us. We're very good about taking our goals into account. So we wanted for that pre-commercial thinning for them to focus more on leaving a diversity of species, not just thinning out the spruce, but actually taking a look at what was there, thinning to appropriate spacing, but making sure that there was a nice diversity of species there. In 2019, we did a small harvest of logs for Perkins House Museum restoration project and in Liverpool, I believe. They were specifically looking for big logs that they had cut in a traditional way at the Sherbrooke mill, because we sent them to the mill in Sherbrooke, and then they went to Liverpool and became part of the museum. And in 2020, we had a small Hurricane Dorian salvage harvest, and then just this year we had our Hurricane Fiona salvage harvest. So this is just some pictures of Fiona. I wasn't around for one, so I imagine it was just as devastating. Dorian wasn't as bad, but Fiona just flattened some sections of Otter Ponds. So this is why we needed to come and do a salvage harvest. There was, we of course left an appropriate amount of coarse woody material on the ground, but there was a lot of merchantable wood that it made sense to harvest and to sell, so that we could do proper silviculture treatments in the future. Because it's really hard to do silviculture with all of these limbs down on the ground and rotting in the way. Sawmilling. So we have 4 times now had a portable sawmill come into the project land. And all of the wood milled here went into building the infrastructure projects at Otter Ponds. So it is in the both visitor shelters, the composting toilets, the bridges, anything we build on site. We really try, unless we need treated lumber for a specific reason, we try to do as to mill up as much as our own as possible, so it doesn't leave the site. And most recently, we had Jesse Risser in last year, and yeah, we had him for 4 days in November last year, and he milled up 8,000 board feet for us. So that's mostly going to the visitor shelter, and also to replacing some of the bridge tread planks. So here's our current list of research and partnerships. The Forest to Wetland Stewardship Project with Ducks Unlimited and Dr. Cindy Stacer is a 2-year project. Our role in that is outreach and education, in using Otter Pond as a base to offer workshops and field days and wetland tours to get people out to look at wetlands and learn more about how to manage around them and the importance of them in the ecosystem. We are actually working on a funding proposal to extend that project for another 5 years right now. So fingers crossed we can continue with this, because it's been a really great partnership with ducks so far. We also have an ongoing project conserving bird species at risk with Dr. Cindy Stacer. She puts out automated recording units, ARUs, every spring. And we are tracking specifically 4 species at risk. Let's see, Canada warbler, olive-sided flycatcher, common nighthawk, and we don't have rusty blackbird. That's one that she's been looking for, but we don't have that. But there was one other one.
Chimney swift, is that one of them?
I don't think that was one we were looking at. If anyone knows it, yell. But of the
Karen just popped up. Eastern
of the
wood
species
peewee.
that Eastern wood peewee, that's it. Yeah. Yeah, so of those 5 species of those five threatened species, we have 4 of them on otter ponds and are monitoring them. And we did find at least one olive-sided flycatcher nest this year that had babies in it. So that's really nice to see. So that's ongoing. We work with Cindy on that every year, and we incorporate those kinds of things into our harvest planning. So we would, if we found a nest, we would of course buffer that out. And we had a lot of good talks with Cindy and with Ducks Unlimited about things that we can do to change our forest management to incorporate beneficial practices for these species into our management. The soil liming project that I had mentioned in the minutes, it's an ongoing project since 2018. It's a partnership between the department, Dalhousie University, and the Nova Scotia Salmon Association. And it's semi-regularly monitored. We have some, limed plots and some control plots on otter ponds, and they are comparing the data between the 2 plots to see how the liming goes through the ecosystem. Owl nesting boxes. I don't recall when we started those. Was it 2016, Dan? I think something like that. So this is a project with Randy Loff at St. FX. And he was looking specifically for boreal owls and saw-whet owls, and both are very small owls. So far, we have found 1 interesting boxes, but we did have, it was 4 or 5 chicks, I think, and he was able to come back and band them. So I think that's a success. Dan checks them every year, cleans out all of the squirrel poo. Another project that we did in the past, we're not really doing much with now, is a tolerant hardwood management project. And we're mostly looking and this was with the Northern Hardwood Research Institute, and we were mostly looking on the hardwood drumlins at different silvicultural treatments in hardwood stands. We've done a Nature Day biota survey. I also forgot to put up here, we did a BioBlitz this year, and collected a bunch of species data that way. We've done spring bird counts, and there's a couple of soil carbon research papers also floating around wherever the data was collected at Otter Ponds. These are just some photos from last year, mostly with our wetland outreach. So yeah, the Forest and Wetland Stewardship Program. So we had a series of wetland tours and webinars and workshops to get people out and to learn more about species at risk in wetlands and beneficial management practices for them, and also how to identify forested wetlands, because they're not as obvious as open bogs or open water. There are full-size trees in them. Here's the owl boxes. There's a little saw-whet owl that Randy found. Some pictures from the liming trail. It was aerially limed by helicopter. Okay, so our tours and workshops. So since we started, we've had over 30 tours at Otter Ponds, and that's been anything from elementary school students all the way up to master's students, community associations, youth groups, naturalists, and anyone who wants to come. We're always happy to have a tour. We've had 9 public field days so far, and nearly 20 workshops and courses on a bunch of different topics. We've had several boundary line maintenance ones, we've had chainsaw ones, we've had lichen identification, anything that we think people will be interested in and want to learn more about that's related to ecological forestry, and many volunteer work parties to keep the trails and everything else in shape. Okay, so between fall of last year and now, these are just to give you an idea of the types of events we have at Otter Ponds, these are the ones that we had. So we started with the land bird species at risk and forested wetlands tour. We then had a treasured wetlands tour. I'll mention a bit more about treasured wetlands in a moment. We had a conserving habitat for forested wetland birds at risk. We had an intro webinar about a week before, and then a bird walk on site. And we had our Otter Ponds iNaturalist BioBlitz this spring, which is great. If anyone's familiar with iNaturalist, we do have an Otter Ponds project within that. So any identifications logged by anyone that day show up in that project as soon as you upload them, because they're geotagged. So we have a nice visual presentation, I guess, of all of the things that people saw on the different days, which is nice. And we just recently had our wetland education field day, and it was great. We had the most people we've had out on site since COVID, so that's really nice. Had a really good time with our partners. So we did this with Ducks Unlimited Canada, Ecology Action Center, and the Mercy Research Institute. So we definitely want to maintain those partnerships and have more events like this in the future. Treasured wetlands. So last year, Otter Ponds was nominated as a treasured wetland, which is a project run by Ducks Unlimited Canada, the provincial government, and a few other nonprofit groups, I believe Mercy to Obeatic Research Institute and a couple of others. So every year they select a handful of the wetlands that are submitted and as their treasured wetlands for the year, and we were selected last year. We still haven't put up our post yet signifying that, but we've been trying. It's been a game of tag. But if you can see on my screen, this is the little sign that's going to go on it. And this is what the photo post will look like. And a little bit hard to see, but if you can see right here, there's like an L shape on top of the sign, and that's to put your phone in to take a picture. So that, and it's pointed at this this exact landscape that I have up in the background. So the purpose of this is so that you get a picture of the same place across seasons and across years, so you can see how it changes. So once we get that up, we'll be able to start collecting those, because there's instructions on how to upload it so we can access them. Future plans, I'm going to leave for now. Dan's going to cover that in a little bit. But does anyone have any questions or want me to expand on any of the things that I mentioned?
Just like to say that was a good presentation there, Chrissy.
Thank you, Pat.
Yeah, I'll second that, but well done, Christy.
The pictures are very nice and they really make for the kind of project that we've been trying to have, so.
Yeah.
I really appreciated the background information. Thank you.
Good. Yeah, I saw enough new people on the registration list that I figured it'd be a good idea to just give an overview.
You'll have this available on Basecamp as a download, will you, Christy?
Sure. Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I'll save it as a PDF so that
Yeah,
it'll be
sweet.
easy to upload.
Sweet, thank you.
Yep. I'll probably put it on the website as well, so anyone
Even
can
better, even better.
access it. And this this presentation is being recorded, so I'll also make that available for anyone who wants to watch it later. All right.
Well, that's great. Well, thanks very much, Christy. Really appreciate your efforts in putting that brief together.
No problem. So I see Ryan has joined. I'm just going to give him.
Yeah, so that's good to know.
Yeah,
He's up next.
come on, he's up next. Yeah, I'm just going to give him the ability to share. Ooh, no, not that one. Come on. Make co-host. There you go. All right, so Ryan should be able to
Yeah, it looks like
share his screen now. Perfect.
yeah, it looks like I've got it there. So, all right. See if I can remember how to work this. In the beginning. So I'll start. I think I recognize most of the folks on the list, but just really quick introduction for anyone that I maybe don't know or doesn't know me. Brian Dickey. I've been in the woods as a forestry professional for 16 or 17 years now. Spent most of my time as a silviculture contractor, but lots of harvest planning and supervision experience. And I'm a former director with Otter Ponds and currently work as the operations coordinator for the Family Forest Network project. So, but I was able to jump in and help out a little bit with the less on the planning side for the salvage, but help with some of the supervision and try and make sure we can get as much cleaned up as we possibly could at Otter Ponds this summer. Luckily, I own a fishing camp in the area, so it gave me a good excuse to head down every weekend, do some checking in on the guys, make sure things are going well, and then head for the camp and try to fish. Although there was no water this year, so not the most successful season. So if there's any mistakes in this presentation. I kind of threw this together last second. I was going to do it with just some photos and everything else, talk my way through it. And Christy asked me if I had presentation today, and then I kind of felt guilty, so I got one put together when I get home this evening quickly. So I'll just quickly walk through a little bit about the planning, the operations, some kind of good news stories about wildlife, and then a little bit about roads and maybe some future plans, especially around recovery in the damaged areas from the hurricane. So as I'm sure everyone knows, September 24th in 2022, the tropical storm Fiona went through. Otter Ponds was very, very much in the right in the damage path for that one. It was, we had a couple days of recovery waiting to get power back and stuff. We were pretty lucky here in Elmsdale, not too much damage, and once we could start reaching out and talking to folks, I don't remember who, but it was asked a couple times at least to try and get down to the Mooseland area and take a look at Otter Ponds. We also wanted to, I was down to check out a few other properties for folks that I know and check the camp and everything. But I would say in terms of a work day in the woods, it was one of my least favorite. Spend the whole day climbing over just big massive spruce, and like Christy said, all the trails that we've spent a lot of hours working on. I've been there not for every party, but I've definitely spent some time on a chainsaw and throwing brush, and yeah, to see all those trails damaged, and the bridges were all under trees, and you couldn't even. There was just so much damage there. You couldn't even get a scope of what went on. Just everywhere you turned, there was, it was just it was devastating a little bit to look at. So, you see some of the photos. So like the one on the left, there's a lot of that went on in some areas of Otter Ponds, especially up around the North Pond Bluff Trail. We didn't do any salvage work up through there. There's definitely lots of damage, but nothing in big, huge patches. More, several spots. There's a lot of big old spruce, like you can see with that one. We're just getting old anyway. Some rot through them, and it's just not enough, or not concentrated enough to ever go after. But then the worst of the damage, for the most part, was luckily closer to the road networks and really centered around a lot of the areas that were already previously damaged in Dorian. It just kind of made the small pockets were big pockets, and the big areas of damage were now huge ones. Or some of them had standing wood left here and there, kind of broke them up a little bit, and that was all on the ground after Fiona. So lots of you see a few, like in the photo on the right, some stem breakage. We lucked out a little bit, and that a lot of the wood tipped over. The roots are still in the ground, so it helped keep at least some of it green for a while, because it was 2022 when it came down, and we didn't get to it till this summer. So definitely some time for it to dry. So again, just a few more pictures. The one on the right is the main bridge at Otter Ponds Brook there, but all the bridges had at least some amount of trees on them or blocking them. So so the pre-treatment assessment was done by Sandy High with Passia Forestry. So he would have gone through. We had actually Dale Press did some drone imagery for us. So Sandy was able to both use the drone imagery and then try and crawl through the blown down timber. And he would have been looking at things like especially soil types of stuff on Crown land. Now there's no harvesting on things like what we would consider wet forests. So maybe not necessarily a wetland, but definitely wetter. A forest that stands wet for long periods of the year. Also on shallow soils, there's big concerns in those areas about nutrient sustainability within the soils. So a shallow soil would be anything that's less than 30 centimeters in depth. So Sandy would have done, the assessments on those maps would have been submitted to DNR. And Wade could correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the salvage was pretty much it was only limited to areas that were previously treated. So That might have been partially why we didn't do anything around the North Bluff Trail there too. But so anyway, the map that's on the right there, you can see the yellow outlines. Those were the areas that were approved for salvage. So I can't remember off the top of my head exactly how many hectares it was, but it was quite a bit. So then we started the harvest and I think it was late June. We had Comform out of Middle Muscat Audubon, so they used their the harvest. You can see there's a Ponce Ergo. It's a mid-sized harvester, reasonably well sized and well suited for the type of wood that was on the ground. It's great at cutting softwood. It definitely struggled some. There's some huge wood in a few of the pockets that they just couldn't get. I mean, I don't know if there's a harvester in Nova Scotia that could have cleaned up some of the wood that was on the ground. And then they had an 8-wheel drive Timber King forwarder, which was great for. We had mostly dry conditions, but there's still some wet areas. Anyone's been to Otter Ponds, though, you go from kind of upland forest to along the edges of wetlands and swamps and everything else pretty quick. So it's nice to have 8-wheel drives, same as the harvester, and you can see with the half tracks, it gives them great flotation. And we had a few small instances with some small ruts, but the other nice thing at Otter Ponds is it's very rocky, stony soil there, so it's you don't really get the deep rutting that you might see in other places. So it's operationally that way, fairly easy, good conditions through the summer to work in. It was actually so dry at the start, we were a little bit worried that we might get shut down for forest fire considerations, but we had some fog. You can see from this is drone imagery that I took, and it was foggy every morning and just enough rain to keep the moisture conditions just about right. So, but the other big challenge you can kind of see in the bottom photo there is the in a lot of areas wood quality was an issue. We've kind of found anywhere that there was bigger wood down, it stayed pretty green, lots of needles on, but the small stuff, and especially anywhere that had any amount of balsam fir, it tended to snap off more. And even though they were still rooted in the smaller trees, they were gone brown, started to stain, and was really, without a market for any type of lower grade wood, wasn't really in a salvageable condition. So we took a whole bunch of areas out for poor wood quality, and also some of what went on with that original map with the salvage areas is because there was old damage from Dorian, and then just an extension with Fiona. A lot of what was actually captured there was areas that had it looks like there's a lot of wood on the ground, but a lot of what was down was actually from stuff that didn't get cleaned up in Dorian. So you kind of had a big load of 4 or 5-year-old wood that's been down. It's really started to rot now, and then some green wood on top of it. But it's really tough to try and pick through that stuff. And sort of just a little bit of merchantable wood, and you're dealing with so much unmerchantable stuff. So there's lots of instances. I'd say Steve and the harvester did a good job of at least trying to make an effort to salvage it, but there's all kinds of places where you can see where he nosed in and cut maybe a machine length or two, and just he was pretty good about texting me or calling me and just said, like, this area is there's too much rotten wood, it's too much small wood or anything. And so we took a lot out for that. But then I know Christy was talking about the Cindy Stace's project with the birds. We actually found so on one of the bird days that we were there for, Cindy and I saw the olive-sided flycatcher, which is the bird on the right there, which is a protected, I don't know if they're threatened or endangered, but a protected species. So we actually found the nest for them, which was just on the edge of one of the salvage areas. So we took that completely out. That was close to the visitor shelter, so we took it out for the birds, but also when we looked at it, there's same thing, some pretty nice wood in there, but there's also a lot of really good regeneration from previous harvesting and stuff, and just not. I kind of hummed and hawed whether it was worth going to get any of that wood and risk damage to the regen. And then when the olive-sided flycatchers were there, made my decision easy. So we buffered out for that. There was a lot of common nighthawks around, and I spent, especially at the start of the harvest, spent quite a bit of time watching them and didn't really see any nesting activity. They were always around in the areas that we were working, but usually just flying overhead. Kind of cool. They're pretty vocal, and they also do this. It's a way that I don't know if it's how they beat their wings or a way that the wind goes over the wings. They call it a sonic boom. It's kind of hard to describe. You'd have to hear it, but it was neat. So didn't see anything that I thought was nesting areas at the time, but actually post salvage in one of our bigger locations went through and actually found a pair nesting. They're ground nesters, and they really like disturbed areas, like they'll nest close to roads or in an old clear cut or a salvage area like this. So didn't have to buffer for it, but they are there and using otter ponds for nesting. And then we also I took out an area, found a big, beautiful old hardwood snag with several nest cavities or holes in it that was being used by a northern flicker. So we took a small area out for that one. And then there was a couple small salvage areas that get down by the river that when I had flown the drone over, it looked like maybe there was some wood and definitely some big spruce in there. So I went for a walk the one day to go down in and try and find it. And I kind of came from either end of it because there was a few different salvage areas in both. And when I got close to it from both directions, I actually ended up with two very angry red-tailed hawks overhead, just screeching and screaming at me the whole time. So I was never able to find the nest there, but definitely confirmed that there is one. And I should have looked it up, but it's a minimum of 100-meter radius for the buffer on any type of active hawk's nest. I think that's about what it is for the red-tailed hawk. So between not knowing exactly where the nest was, but knowing it was close to a few of the areas that were identified for potential salvage, and then not being that much wood and not that great a quality down there, we actually took a few of those ones out that were closer to the water course down there too. So, and, I'd highlight with that one. I'm not a great birder, but I'm definitely an interested birder. So, and it all it took for me to find some of this stuff is just a little bit of intentional listening and looking was all it was. Just kind of watching and anyone, especially like I talk about this all the time with forest professional stuff. That's something we need more people to be interested in, and if more folks were even just took a slight interest in it, we would end up doing this type of stuff. I think a lot more often. So our total salvage area ended up only being about 12 and a half, or exactly 12 and a half hectares. So I should have taken the numbers you can see there's the areas in the salvage, but all of these black areas are exactly what we salvaged. So I actually have this from I flew my drone over, so I've got drone imagery of most of the areas we salvaged. So you can see the small one down along the bottom here. That was a small little bit of wood. And then as far as I could tell, I think you can see my cursor. So I took this piece out and then this one up through here, and the red-tailed hawk nest was somewhere in along the river in this area. I couldn't tell for sure where it was, and I didn't want to spend a whole bunch of time down in there because it's I could tell I was irritating them, so I didn't want to bother them too much. So but you can see it in a lot of them, like this piece in the back. We poked in, we got a little bit cleaned up. A lot of what was around the edges on these ones, like I said, was a big mixture of Fiona and old Dorian wood, and some parts of these polygons really didn't have hardly anything in it. So you can see a little bit of it from this photo. So when I walked into this one, kind of in this area, you can see a couple big green live trees, mostly spruce. But then, all the standing timber, the goal with the harvest and part of the regulations for the Fiona salvages, anything that's standing, you're supposed to leave standing wherever you can. You can cut trees, if you need to poke a trail through anything. But so any of this wood that kind of makes that, ring around that area, we wanted to leave all that standing, and then everything below it and over in this pocket to the west here is old gray dead wood, really not worth even trying to salvage it anyway. So that's a big reason why a lot of the areas ended up being taken out. It was it's a bit of a shame. It'll make it you lose some of the economic opportunity in being able to salvage some of that timber. Not a huge concern for me, but my bigger one is around when you have a huge coarse woody material load on the ground like that. It makes it tough. Probably won't have to plant in these areas. I find the damaged areas like that, especially where you keep a lot of wood on the ground, tend to regenerate well. But when it comes time to do some silviculture work, or get in there with brush saws or anything, it's operationally very challenging to climb over top of that stuff and still be productive when you're trying to do your work. So then as part of the harvest, or at the same time that we were there, we needed to clean a few of the roads up to get the log trucks in. So we had Mitch from Atlantic Tree Solutions down for 2 days. It's just a kind of a neat little machine. It's just I don't know if it even weighs 2 tons. It's called an Avant loader. John Deere sells them there and out of Truro. So he's got that and just a small little mulcher mounted on the head of it. And I was a little bit unsure about bringing him down because I didn't want it to, you're always trying to be budget conscious, but it doesn't mulch big wood very well, but most of what we had there was kind of in that 1 inch and under, and that mulcher actually did really, really well with that. It took him not quite 2 days to get through the whole thing, but he mulched out the ditch is basically on over 2 kilometers of road, and the big landing, which was the worst spot up on I think on Hobble Hills, was where that one was. So he looked after that work for us, and then part of what I was looking at too is as I was there, like Christy mentioned, the folks from the Federation were in updating the FSC plan. So they're good young techs. I think the data we're going to get from them is really great, but a little bit light on experience around operational stuff. So I'm actually meeting with them next week they want me to go over the data with them just to make sure there's no concerns around anything, but also talk a little bit about maybe some recommended treatments for the future. We've lost a lot of the big mature wood, but there's still a lot of areas with especially with a little bit younger wood and some areas that would benefit from either some light thinning or some type of a regular gap style shelter wood treatments and stuff. So even though we lost a lot of wood through the hurricane, there's no reason to stop our management, and especially as we kind of shift our management focus even more to being ready for a lot more of these warming climate scenarios where we have a lot of big windstorms and drier temperatures, maybe a little bit higher fire risk, everything like that. Is there ways we can use harvesting to help get ourselves ready for that type of work? And in looking at that, one of the big things we're starting to consider is we've got a few newer contractors. So Mitch, that was actually there with the mulcher, has some new small harvesting gear, and then the 2 photos I've got on the right there is Cody from Ox Resources out of the Truro area. As you can see, he's got the harvester on the top. It's just an 8-ton Kubota excavator with a small roller head it's called the Nisula 425, sold by MC Power, and then his forwarder on the bottom there is it only hauls a cord and a half. So it's a very small forwarder. It's a little bit limited in terms of you can't go more than a couple 100 meters into the woods, but for really small targeted harvesting work, it's kind of a dream come true group of machines for the type of work that I like doing. So we're going to look at maybe a little bit of that type of stuff. There's still some I'll call it salvage work that could definitely be done, especially in the hardwood stands. Like they didn't get hit super hard and didn't really qualify for Fiona salvage work, but they could have some regular harvesting done over the next year or two and a lot of the wood that's blown down will still be good, especially if it's just going for firewood. And that can be done just through some type of regular, partial harvesting. So look at a little bit of that. And then a lot of what I was looking at too, especially where we were close to areas that were blown down in Dorian, it's been 4 or 5 years since that happened. We're starting to have a lot of areas that are coming on ready for, there's some areas ready for more pre-commercial thinning, kind of right in the heart of Otter ponds. And then a lot of the areas from Dorian, same thing, are ready for what we would call early competition control or manual weeding, which is, the way it was originally applied, kind of intended to almost mimic herbicide spraying but done manually. But the way that a lot of us use it now is, we actually want to keep some of the hardwood, especially some of the better species. So you may cut the gray birch and that type of stuff out. But as you find, red maples, which is a good climate resilient species, and especially yellow birches in there, keep those. And one of the big drawbacks I've always had with, aside from the fact that I just don't like spraying chemicals, is there's no way to control balsam fir, which is, shorter lived species. It's got a lot of issues with in a warmer climate anyways, but when you go through and do it with a spacing saw, you can actually cut some of those fir away from your red spruce and pine and everything else. So definitely have quite a bit of area ready for some of that type of work in there too. So that was all I had for that. I do have, I'm gonna have to, I think I need to stop sharing. If anyone has questions, you just show them at me at any time here. I do have, I think, a couple quick videos. I'm just gonna try and key them up here. Okay, here we go.
Yeah, so thanks very much for that, Ryan. A fantastic brief. I've got a couple of questions, but I'll just wait to see if anyone else in the audience has anything for you. Thanks very much.
So, all right, so that's back up. So this is just, I took a couple of videos of some of the salvage work that had gone on. You'll have to forgive, I'm a very poor drone pilot. Most of what I do is automated flying. I just hit the button and watch it fly around. So when I try, it's not cinematically appeasing watching me try and remember what control does what. But you can see a lot of, there's a lot of coarse woody material on the ground. Some of these areas, this is right next to the landing, the guys were able to clean up quite a bit of wood, but you can see, a bit of wood roadside, the harvester and forwarder. And this is really quick too. I wasn't shooting these videos for thinking I was going to show them off to anyone. This is me being a lazy forester, just flying it around. It's easier to see where they've picked the wood up and if there's rotting problems or anything else, if you can sit on the tailgate of your truck and fly a drone around. So you can see, like, there's big areas that blew down, but there's still lots of pockets of standing timber. We also left, you can see on the right side, like, we didn't chase every single stick all over the place. So there's requirements around coarse woody material and stuff like that within the salvage harvest, but I honestly didn't take any measurements because there was no worry at all in from what I could see on the ground about not having enough. It's there's lots of coarse woody material left in there. Especially, I think we'll see a couple of them here. You can kind of see a little bit of on the left. Like sometimes, even though there was a couple big, maybe a few big sticks, if they were kind of blown down in a bit of a mess, like not everything laid over in one direction, if it was kind of a real hairy mess and stuff like that, we actually just elected to leave those. They become, they're good for habitat for wildlife, and also it's just the type of stuff that the harvester really would struggle with trying to pull some of those sticks out of those piles. So it was just easier to leave some of it sometimes. So anyway. Okay, so that was the one video, and then I have one other. That was, if I can remember where I have it. There we go. All right, I will share my screen again. I don't know if the sound will come through on this one or not, but this is actually a video I grabbed the day I walked in and saw the red-tailed hawk. So if you can see the hawk flying either way, and if the sound comes through, you'll hear it very angry at me. So this is just the one of them. You know, anytime I get out in the open, it could see me. It was flying, and then there was another one off. I'm assuming probably the male flying around, and maybe the female stayed on the nest. One of them tended to stay back a little bit further in the trees. You didn't see it fly much, but so this is they're one of the more vocal birds. If you happen to find a nest, they definitely, you know, the only one that's worse is if you happen to find a goshawk nest, because they will the goshawks will actually knock the hard hat right off your head if you get too close sometimes. So
Well, that's great, Ryan. We do have one question in on the chat. Are you able to check that?
yeah, I see that one from Beth. So
Yeah.
I don't know if Jason has ever been to Otter Ponds or not. It's a shame if he hasn't, because he's Jason's a great birder and a forester, so he'd be a great person to have out there. But we've definitely had definitely had some good birders, not specific to the harvest, although Christy, I can't remember, the bird ID event was either just before the harvest or during. I think it was during the harvest. So, and so you know, we had Cindy Stacer, who's one of the best. She was out, and then you know, a bunch of other, I guess, avid birders. I'm an avid birder. I'm just a really poor avid birder, I think so. But like I said, that's the kind of the beauty of it is I know what a bird looks like, and I have enough bird books and keys, and using the Merlin app especially to at least get me close. And then I know Cindy well enough. I'd say she's my friend. She might not like me. I don't know, but I have her contact info either way. So if I don't know, I usually try and take a picture of some videos, and she can definitely help me. So
Well, thanks, Ryan. One question I have, you talked about doing manual weed control. Does that apply to some of the salvage areas that were given up because there was too much deadfall from Dorian that was unusable? Because those places look very difficult to get into and do anything with, whether manual or not.
They'll be it depends on who we ask to do it and just how much there is in there, especially the manual weeding. Can be really hard because that wood's not that old and it's not down on the ground yet. Sometimes, you know, with pre-commercial thinning, if you wait long enough and it's rotted down well enough, you can kind of pick your way through it. But yeah, there's definitely, you know, the areas that were salvaged from Dorian are very close, or I think some of them are actually ready for it now. And then a lot of times it'd be kind of picking your way through the stuff that's good to do and kind of do as much as you possibly can in the areas that weren't salvaged, while still kind of keeping an eye on your productivity. You know, anyone that's doing this, you expect to make some type of profit off it. So there's only it's no different than the harvest. There's only so much junk that I could push them to get into before it, you know, if they can't make any money at it, they're just not going to do it. So
yeah, makes sense. And another question I have is, do you think it's feasible? Like you talked about, I forget the gentleman's name, but there's a couple of options for smaller harvesting and forwarding equipment available. But the wood from the harvest now will have been on the ground another year. Is any of that wood from Fiona still salvageable?
yeah, I'm actually hoping I was trying to convince actually Mitch that did the mulching, because he's a newer contractor to bring his forwarder and a couple of he's got some chainsaw guys out to do some salvage work. And we couldn't get to it this fall, and it would be a little bit questionable whether that wood is still good enough quality that the big mills would be interested in it, because they really want fresh wood too, because there's, you know, part of the issue with some of the dead wood, even though it's quite sound, the mills, you know, if we sold it as studwood to Leadwood's Lumber or someone like that, they still produce wood chips and everything from those, and those go typically to Port Hawkesbury paper, and they really don't like dry chips. So if you have too much dry wood coming through the mill, it creates issues around where do you get rid of your sawdust and chips and everything else, that even if you're getting lumber out of it. And there's also issues around trying to dry really dry lumber, but especially with some of the bigger stuff, like I said, it's still, it hasn't been that long since I was there, so some of the really big ones are green. And even if they don't have green needles on them, I think with some of the biggest stuff in there, I've got some good contacts for folks with bandsaw mills that would love to have some of that, and especially you know, if we can kind of approach a few folks, you know, there's some 30+ inch across the stump big red spruce in there that there's folks around that would love it if you could cut them as 20 or 24 footers, and they can make some real specialty products. And there's no issue with the wood, and especially with the bandsaw mills, they tend to not have you know, they're not kiln drying it or anything. It's just air dried lumber anyway. So for them, it's not an issue, and to a certain extent almost better to have some dry wood, because it's usable quicker for them. So that's kind of my hope with those. And then same thing with the hardwoods, you tend to have quite a bit of time. You know, most of them still, a lot of the hardwood that was on the ground this summer leafed out, so it's still good live wood. And you know, even if it's dead for 2 years, most of it's going to go for firewood. So again, it's almost better to get it a couple years later. So
Wow. Any questions here from the Mooseland audience?
It's probably worth saying, Ryan, that because we had to wait for almost 2 years to get a contractor to go in and do that salvage, that contributed to a lot of additional wood that dried out and was basically part of the problem with not recovering as much as we would have had we been able to do it right away.
yeah, big time, especially like I said, in any areas that had smaller diameter wood, you know, it tended to die a little bit quicker, and yeah, it was just it was so dry. And even if it was you know, I saw a few of the loads going over there with some of the smaller studs. The trucker he was rounded right up over the top of his stakes to get his full 32 or whatever it was tons on. So it was pretty light wood anyway. So yeah, you know, if we did 12.5 hectares, we probably would, I don't know if we would have doubled that if we got in, you know, 6 months after the hurricane, but definitely would have been quite a bit more if we could have found someone to, but that's not unique to us at Otter Ponds, even though it took a while for the approval and everything. Even if we got it approved, it still would have been, you know, I know landowners, I'm still helping some landowners try and get wood salvaged now, you know, more than 2 years after the hurricane, just because it kind of coincided with, you know, a year or two post Northern Pulp closing down, and we had already lost some contractors, and there just wasn't enough folks to get everything cleaned up. So yeah, it's a shame, but it's, you know, before we were ever here, this happened all the time, and the forest is still survived. And you know, I can guarantee you, Otter Ponds, before anyone settled here, was blown down several times in the past, and still grew up to be a beautiful forest. So you know, whether we can get in and do the management work we need to or not, it'll be fine without us. So.
I like your perspective on that, Ryan. Thanks very much.
It's the only
well,
perspective you can have, I think. So.
Well, we'll have to move on to the next item. So maybe Christy, you could bring that goals slide up again. Before we go from you, Ryan, though, I would really like to thank you in front of everyone for managing the harvest. I just don't know what we would have done if you hadn't been available with your availability and your expertise, you know, to take care of everything. So we really appreciate that. You were a lifesaver. And I also think you're a bit modest when you talk about, you know, your abilities as a birder. I think you're a pretty darn good bird guy, and that's another great asset you bring to the table, that you were able to keep an eye out for birds and bird nests. So again, thanks a lot, Ryan.
Yeah, it was my pleasure.
So this Christy and I and a few others have been talking about goals for the coming year. There's always work on the horizon, and I just wanted to kind of talk about what I think the priorities are for the coming year. We're getting in, you know, the whole project, like a lot of things in the province, have been, you know, tripped up by first COVID and then Dorian and then Fiona. So we haven't had the rhythm of activities in this project that we did have for the first 10 years. But I think if we don't get any more bad hurricanes, and we are almost at the end of the current hurricane season, so far we've been lucky. I shouldn't maybe talk like that, but I think we're going to be okay for this year. So we can get back to some of the, you know, the traditional things that we really want to do. And so for me, the top priorities for the coming year, 2025, are, you know, get the visitor shelter rebuilt. It was a great asset. It's really rotten having groups come and, you know, they don't have any shelter when the weather isn't good. Pat and I were working on it this summer. We got all those columns in place. We're pretty happy with the progress so far. I think that's kind of was the trickiest part of the whole build. So we're going to be back again in December, putting up the rafters for the roof system. And, you know, if anybody in the audience is keen on building, you know, we're happy to have you come. We don't want to open it up to like a big volunteer thing and have a lot of people milling around at all different skill levels. But if you have experience building, and if you just like building, just let Christy know or let me know, and we'll try to fold you into our work project. So that's something that we definitely want to get finished for 2025, new visitor shelter, preferably for the spring, so we'll have the benefit for it all next summer. The other thing is we need to restore the trail network that we already built. It's pretty frustrating that twice our trail network has been obliterated by hurricanes. It's getting a little hard to get volunteers motivated to make the trails again. But I think that in the coming year, we can at least get back to the 5 kilometers of trails. They all have different purposes. They go through different habitats and different forestry treatment areas. The trail network is important, and I really want to get that completed. And I think it's feasible for 2025. On top of that, this is an old idea going back to the beginning of the project, but now it's time to get some proper signage on those trails, the names of the trails at the trailheads, little maps, you know, nice metal signs with the proper graphic design that are professionally made, and have posts along the trails at different areas to explain what's going on, to explain to people what it is they're looking at. It could be, you know, an ecological or habitat thing. It could be something about forestry treatment that they can see, or something about, you know, the impact of all these hurricanes. So as a board, we are going to work up some information packages that we'd like to, you know, just really a couple of sentences each that will be displayed along the trails. So that's the number 2 thing that I think is feasible for 2025. And yeah, oh, and the other thing didn't appear here, but yeah, we need to get the our management plan updated. That's we had Sandy working on that for quite a while, but I don't know what the status is, unless you do, Wade.
No, the Federation of Woodland Owners has they're almost done with our new plan.
Well, that's the FSC certification.
That's right.
Right.
Yeah.
You're
That-
saying-
But they're making They're updating our management plan as part of the recertification.
Oh, they are.
Yeah.
It's all done. I'm actually
Oh.
gonna meet with them on Monday they just want another set of eyes to go over some stuff and
Oh.
before they submit it. So yeah, I'm meeting with Tanya and Liam on Monday. So
Well, please excuse my ignorance. That's great news. I didn't realize that. I thought that was strictly the FSC certification, but I guess you need a management plan in order to get the certification. So, okay, well, it's great to know that they've taken over from Sandy on that. So, hey, I guess that third priority for 2025, it's already in the bag. So that's great news. So that's all I wanted to say about future plans. I just want to talk about the coming year. And with the trails and the visitor shelter, that will really make it a lot easier to have the public events that we like to have. So, any questions about future plans? If not, I will conclude that, and Christy will go on to the nominating committee.
It's here somewhere. There it is.
All right. Thanks, Christy. Okay, so this one slide captures the Otter Pond board. As usually happens over the course of a year, a few people drop off for various reasons, and but we've got a full slate of board members for the coming year, and you can see on the right-hand side the four supporting organizations and the names of the directors, the representatives from each of those four groups, with new names in green: Carol Betts, Barry Prest, Tim Wackfer, and Gordon Power. So I would like to welcome Carol, Barry, Tim, and Gordon to the board. I know some of them better than others. I know that Carol has her own woodlot with her partner, so that's great. You don't have to be a forestry expert, but owning a woodlot is a great motivator for being involved in Otter Ponds. And Carol, I bet you'll learn things by participating in this project. And I know Tim's got some relevant experience. Karen sent me his CV, although I couldn't find it just before the meeting, so I forget what it was, but we're glad to have you on board, Tim. And Gordon Power is a guy who is creating a new business focused on urban forestry, basically salvaging and repurposing the wood from trees that are taken down in different municipalities, often because of hurricanes or also because of disease. And Gordon's just here on the Eastern Shore. And you can read all about Gordon's work in the latest issue of Atlantic Forestry Review. So he's getting a bit of a profile in his new work. So I welcome Carol, Barry, and Tim and Gordon. Really looking forward to working with you. And I'd like to thank Lori Morton, Alan McKinnon, and Ross Watson for their contributions in the past year. So thanks very much to everyone. And yeah, are there any questions about
Motion to accept that slate of directors.
Oh my gosh, yeah, I forgot.
Give Barry a little intro first, though.
Well, I don't know.
He's hiding in the back.
Barry, yeah, maybe you should introduce yourself. You're right here.
Yeah, I'm here.
Just another
Just another press. Yeah.
We have a collection.
Mooseland area community.
Yeah, enough said.
It's enough to make you wonder if there's any people that aren't pressed who live in Mooseland. Well, Barry is Wade's brother, and
Father.
yeah, Jacob's father.
Snap you.
That wasn't where it was going, but the Prests are all foresters in one way or another. So Barry is most welcome, and I'm sure will be. And Barry as a volunteer has done a lot for the project over the years.
Well, hopefully do a little more going forward.
Yeah. Well, that'd be great. So we do need to have I'd like to move. Oh. I guess.
No, you can get that.
Is that really important?
Well,
I don't know. Well, somebody's whispering in my ear that it would be nice if someone who is not a member of the board would move to accept the new slate of directors. Could someone perhaps put up their hand and make that motion?
And all at once.
Yeah, I'm just,
I
Yeah.
will move.
sorry, did someone?
Who was that? I missed it.
Eugene.
Eugene,
Thank you,
okay.
Eugene.
Okay, do we have a seconder? How about you, Beth? Why don't you second this for us? Well, it doesn't matter. I'll second it.
Well, I'll second
But we-
Dan is,
I'll put Pat.
yep.
Alrighty. All right, so all those in favor, say aye.
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 All those opposed, nay. All right. I think we've got a new slate of directors. So thanks very much, everyone. And right, oh yeah, that's the election of the new boards. That's done. So now the last agenda item is other business. Does anyone have any other business? Because I don't have anything written down here. So if no one has a topic to bring up, looks like we don't, then we'll just move on to, well, should we talk about the next meeting or just forget about that right now? Since the AGM. Okay. So with that, that concludes our agenda for tonight. And so I'd like to move that we adjourn the meeting.
Seconded.
All right, all those in favor?
That's good.
All right, that's what I thought. Great. Well, thanks very much to everyone for attending, and thanks, Christy, for putting all this, the agenda and that big presentation together. And thanks to Ryan for his great talk on the salvage harvest, and Dougal and Wade for the financial presentation. So that's it for now. So thanks very much, everyone.